The CEO laughed in my face, said my work was worthless, while bragging about a $20 million contract. 10 minutes later, that money slipped straight out of his hands. The boardroom smelled like money. Polished wood, filtered air, and the faint hiss of the espresso machine down the hall. Everyone sat in perfect rows, screens glowing, ties tight. And me, Anna Carter, 28, shoved at the end of the table like an intern who wandered in by mistake. I had worked 3 months straight on those numbers. Models, risk projections, cash flow diagrams. I had slept in that office, eaten vending machine dinners, and written code at 3 in the morning. My fingerprints were all over the project. And then he laughed again. Michael Grant, CEO. Perfect suit, perfect watch, teeth so white they looked like they belonged to someone else. He leaned back in his chair, tapped my report with a single finger, and grinned like he was watching a bad comedy. This? His voice filled the room, smooth, condescending. This is garbage. Numbers scribbled by a junior who thinks she's smarter than the market. Completely worthless. The room chuckled with him. A few nervous, a few eager to be seen laughing on command. My stomach burned, but I kept my face still. Then he raised the document high, the one I wrote, the one with my formulas, my analysis, my signature in the metadata. Gentlemen, this is why I earn the big bonuses. Because I know how to separate trash from value. He dropped my work on the table, let it slide across the glossy surface like a piece of junk mail. And then he pulled up the slides. My slides. Cleaned, polished, stripped of my name. He presented them like they were his own creation. Risk allocation strategy, growth model, projected margin curve. Word for word. The board leaned in, nodding. Michael grinned wider. By the end, he was standing, arms spread, like some Wall Street messiah. This, he said, clicking the final slide, is the plan that secures us a $20 million contract. And gentlemen, I will personally oversee its success. Applause. Real applause this time. The room echoed with it. I sat frozen. My work had just been called worthless, then paraded as the jewel of the company. Michael glanced at me one last time, eyes sharp, mouth curled in that perfect CEO smirk. You see, Anna? Not everyone's cut out for the big table. The meeting broke. Chairs scraped, deals whispered, hands shook. I stayed seated. Because in that moment, I wasn't broken. I was memorizing every detail. Every word. Every smile. Every stolen line. The humiliation wasn't the end. It was the start. The email came before I even got back to my desk. Subject line, termination notice. No meeting, no conversation, no handshake. Just a cold block of text, sent less than an hour after the boardroom circus. Effective immediately, Anna Carter's employment with Grant and Company is terminated. Please return all company property by end of day. That was it. No thank you, no explanation. Just a clean digital execution. I sat there for a second, staring at the screen while the office around me buzzed. Phones rang, printers spat out contracts, assistants marched back and forth in high heels. Nobody looked at me. Nobody wanted to. It's funny how quickly people forget you exist the moment you're no longer useful. I shut my laptop, slid it into the company-issued black case, and stood up. The walk to my cubicle felt like a funeral march. A few heads turned, then quickly snapped back to their monitors. Pretend not to notice. Pretend she's invisible. At my desk, the little world I had built was waiting for me, coffee mug with lipstick stains, post-it notes stuck like battle scars across the monitor, a half-dead plant in a chipped ceramic pot. I packed everything into a cardboard box. The mug clinked against the glass jar of pens. That's when I heard his voice again. Leaving already? Michael Grant stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, like he had just wandered over to enjoy the view. His grin was calm, almost paternal. You should be proud, Anna. You got to sit at the big table today. Not everyone gets that chance. He nodded at the box in my hands, like it was proof of my failure. Some people just aren't built for the pressure. I wanted to throw the box at his face. Instead, I smiled. A sharp, quiet smile. You're right, I said. Not everyone is. And then I walked past him, my heels clicking against the polished floor. The elevator doors closed, sealing him and his smirk on the other side. What he didn't know was that while he was busy mocking me, I was already building the list in my head. Files, emails, version histories. Digital fingerprints that didn't vanish just because HR sent a template email. They thought they had erased me. But I wasn't gone. I was just getting started. I stepped out into the night with a cardboard box in my arms and a storm in my chest. The city hummed like nothing had happened, horns blaring, neon signs buzzing, people rushing with coffee cups and phones glued to their hands. But for me, time had snapped in two. Behind me, the glass tower of Grant and Company loomed, glowing like a shrine. Floor after floor lit up with that sterile corporate light. The building looked invincible, untouchable. But I knew better. I had seen the cracks in the glass. I set the box on the hood of my car and stared at the reflection of the tower in the windshield. That place had swallowed 3 years of my life. 3 years of late nights, unpaid overtime, endless meetings where my ideas were ignored until a man repeated them. 3 years of being invisible until someone needed my work to shine on their resume. And now they had cut me loose with a single email. A laugh slipped out of me, sharp and bitter. They thought I was finished. I opened the box, rifling through the scraps of my office life. Post-its, pens, the mug, and at the bottom, my external hard drive. The one I always kept hidden in the drawer for backups. Not company property. Mine. Inside were drafts, models, early simulations. Versions Michael hadn't bothered to clean up when he stole my work. All stamped with dates, metadata, and yes, my name. I ran a finger along the edge of the drive and felt the shift inside me. The humiliation was still there, heavy and raw. But underneath it, something sharper was growing. A plan. The contract wasn't signed yet. $20 million were dangling in the air, waiting to land. And Michael Grant had no idea that the foundation of his masterpiece still belonged to me. I slid the drive into my bag, slammed the trunk of the car, and climbed inside. If they wanted to erase me, I'd let them try. And then I'd make sure the eraser snapped in their hand. My apartment was silent, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional horn from the street below. I dropped the cardboard box onto the kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten takeout during endless late nights working for Grant and Company. It looked pitiful now, covered in scraps of my old office life. I didn't care about the coffee mug or the wilted plant. I wanted the hard drive. The one I'd always kept tucked in the back of my drawer, labeled simply backup. Not company property. Mine. I hooked it to my laptop. A soft blue light blinked and folders opened in neat little rows. Drafts. Spreadsheets. Simulations. Every version stamped with dates, times, metadata, and my initials. My fingerprints were everywhere. Michael thought he'd stolen my work clean. But digital paper doesn't lie. I clicked through documents, scrolling past late-night versions, rough drafts, corrections. Each one showed the same pattern. My files uploaded, Michael forwarding them to his personal account, then disappearing from the chain. He thought he was slick. But the evidence was right here, waiting for someone who knew where to look. I poured a glass of cheap wine and leaned back in my chair. 3 years at that company had taught me plenty of things, but the most valuable lesson was this. Nothing ever really gets deleted. Audit trails, server logs, hidden caches, if you know where to dig, the past sticks to everything. And now, that past was my weapon. I pulled up the final presentation Michael had shown in the boardroom. He had stripped my name, polished the slides, added his executive tone. But the skeleton was mine. The formulas, the projections, the allocation model, all copied word for word. If you lined up his version next to mine, the match was undeniable. I checked the contract folder next. Draft agreements, negotiations, correspondence with the client. And there it was, $20 million on the line. My $20 million. My phone buzzed, rattling against the table. A text from Thomas Reed, one of the only people at the company who had ever treated me like more than furniture. He stole it all, didn't he? I smirked and typed back with one hand. Every word. I've got proof. The typing dots popped up immediately. Then his response. Meet me tomorrow. I have something you'll want to see. I stared at the screen for a long second. If Thomas was reaching out, it meant he had information. And information was the one thing Michael couldn't afford anyone else to have. I closed the laptop, the screen going black, leaving me staring at my own reflection. My hair was messy, my face pale, exhaustion carved into the lines under my eyes. But my expression had changed. 3 hours ago, I'd been humiliated, discarded, erased. Now I was armed. Michael thought the story ended when HR hit send. But that email wasn't my ending. It was the start of his downfall. The next morning, I sat in the corner booth of a downtown diner. The kind with cracked red vinyl seats, sticky menus, and a constant smell of burnt coffee. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, and quiet was exactly what I needed. Thomas Reed walked in 10 minutes late, looking like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, his jacket wrinkled, and his eyes carried that mix of fear and determination I knew too well. He spotted me, slid into the booth, and didn't bother with small talk. "You were right," he said. "He stole everything." I raised an eyebrow. I didn't need confirmation. I lived it. Thomas leaned closer, lowering his voice. "It's worse than you think. Do you know how much the contract is actually worth? 20 million. He shook his head slowly, like he was about to drop a bomb. "Try 30. I stared at him, my fork frozen halfway to the plate. 30? Thomas nodded. "The board only hears the polished number. What Michael pitched to them was 20. But the client? The client agreed to 30. 10 million is unaccounted for, buried in side agreements and executive bonuses. He's pocketing the difference." I felt my chest tighten. Not only had he stolen my work, but he was skimming $10 million off the top like it was pocket change. Thomas slid a thin folder across the table. "These are internal memos. Draft agreements. I shouldn't even have them, but I can't watch him get away with this." I opened the folder and scanned the pages. There it was in black and white, the real numbers, the hidden amendments, the signatures. And Michael's initials scrawled at the bottom of every page. "This is fraud," I whispered. Thomas exhaled. "Exactly. And if it comes out, he's done. But you," he looked at me seriously, "you have the power to bring it out. Your name is on the original models. You can prove he built the whole scheme on your work." The waitress dropped off another pot of coffee, oblivious to the war plans unfolding over toast and eggs. I closed the folder and slid it into my bag. For the first time since the humiliation, I felt something solid beneath my feet. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was leverage. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Thomas hesitated. "Then, because I've seen what he does to people. He ruins them, uses them up, throws them out. And he thinks he can't be touched. Someone needs to touch him." I studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then let's touch him." We sat in silence for a while, the diner buzzing around us, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Michael thought he was untouchable. But now I had proof, an ally, and 30 million reasons to tear down his empire. By noon the next day, I was sitting in a law office that smelled like leather and old money. The receptionist had raised an eyebrow when I walked in with my oversized bag and a cardboard folder clutched like it contained the nuclear codes. Maybe it did. The lawyer's name was David Lawson. Mid-40s, gray at the temples, sharp eyes behind frameless glasses. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Thomas told me you have documentation." I set the folder on the table, opened my laptop, and laid out the files like a dealer flipping cards. Drafts, emails, logs, contracts. Every piece connected like a chain. David scrolled through the documents, his expression unreadable. He leaned back after 10 minutes, steepling his fingers. "You're not exaggerating," he said finally. "This is solid. He stole your intellectual property, and on top of that, there are clear signs of misrepresentation in the contract negotiations. 30 million. He underreported the deal by 10. The number hit again. 30 million. My throat went dry, but I forced myself to stay focused. "What does that mean for me?" "It means you have leverage," David said calmly. "The kind that keeps CEOs awake at night. You can file a claim for ownership of the work. If successful, the contract could be voided or redirected under your name. The fraud angle." He tapped the folder. "That's criminal. If this lands in court, Grant won't just lose his job. He could face charges." I sat back, heart pounding. The humiliation in the boardroom felt distant now, like a bruise compared to the knife I was holding. But David continued, "This won't be easy. He'll deny everything, bury you in lawyers, and try to spin the board against you. You'll need more than documents. You'll need a timeline, witnesses, and absolute discipline." "Discipline I have," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. David studied me for a moment. "You don't just want compensation, do you?" "No," I said flatly. "I want him stripped of everything he thinks makes him untouchable." The lawyer nodded once, almost approvingly. "Then we'll start by sending a quiet notice. Not to the board. Not yet. Straight to him. Let him know you're not gone. That you're watching." I felt a cold satisfaction spread through me. Michael thought he had erased me with a single email. He was about to learn that I wasn't so easy to delete. David closed the folder and looked me dead in the eye. "You've got a war on your hands, Anna. Are you ready for that?" I smiled. I've been ready since the moment he left. The building looked different at night. By day, Grant and Company gleamed like a temple of glass and steel. By night, it was hollow, half asleep, with only a few floors lit like scattered islands. I stood across the street, hoodie pulled over my head, badge in my pocket. Technically, my access should have been revoked after the termination email. But the IT department was slow, and I knew how long it took them to update the system. 48 hours on average. I still had time. The lobby was empty except for a bored security guard watching a muted TV. I swiped my badge, the turnstile light blinked green, and just like that, I was back inside. The elevator hummed as it carried me to the 12th floor. The doors opened to silence. No chatter, no ringing phones, no clacking keyboards. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights. The office felt like a crime scene after the detectives had gone home. I walked past cubicles filled with forgotten coffee cups and family photos. My cubicle sat stripped bare, just an empty chair and a cleared desk. They had already erased me from the space. But not from the system. I slid into Michael's office instead. His door wasn't locked. Typical. Men like him assumed walls and titles were protection enough. The room smelled faintly of expensive cologne and stale power. Papers stacked neatly, a family photo angled toward visitors, a desk too clean to actually be used. I moved quickly. Laptop out. Flash drive in. His computer greeted me with a password prompt. Easy. I'd reset that system for him 3 times in the past year. He always used variations of the same phrase, Big Win. Tonight it was Big Win 2023. The desktop opened. I copied everything. Emails, project files, hidden folders he thought nobody knew about. One of them was labeled private. Inside, side agreements, off-book memos, conversations with the client that never went through official channels. Fraud, spelled out in plain English. As the files transferred, I wandered to the window. The city stretched below, glittering, unaware of the quiet war unfolding 12 stories up. My reflection stared back at me, hoodie, tired eyes, a woman who no longer looked erased. The progress bar ticked up, 78%, 92%, 100%. Done. I pulled the drive, closed the laptop, and slid everything back exactly as I'd found it. The hum of the office felt louder now, like the building itself knew what I'd taken. On my way out, I stopped by the server room. The door was locked, but my badge still worked. The cold air hit me like a wave. Racks of blinking lights filled the space, a living heartbeat of data. I pulled another set of logs, access histories, file transfers, calendar records. Proof that Michael had used my work long before the boardroom show. I left the server room the way I found it, locking the door behind me. By the time I reached the street again, the city felt different. In my bag, I carried his secrets. And for the first time, I knew I had the upper hand. The morning after my midnight raid, I sat in a corner booth of a coffee shop near the office. Laptop open, earbuds in, pretending to work like every other freelancer nursing a latte. In reality, I was cataloging what I'd stolen. The folder named private was a goldmine. Side agreements, payment schedules, client correspondence. If the board ever saw these files, Michael wouldn't just lose his contract, he'd lose his career. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. Anna Carter, a woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Catherine Miller. HR. I froze. HR was the enemy. HR had sent the termination email. HR was supposed to be silent, distant, a faceless machine that cleaned up corporate messes. What do you want? I asked flatly. To talk. Off the record. Can we meet? There was something in her tone, tired, wary but sharp. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met an hour later in the most un-HR setting imaginable, a park bench across from the building. No suits, no glass walls, no security cameras. Just a woman in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked nothing like the polished professional who had once lectured us about compliance policies. You're not safe, Catherine said, cutting straight through the silence. Michael has people scrubbing files, adjusting logs, rewriting timelines. He's covering his tracks. If you think your name still lives in the system, it won't for long. I tightened my grip on the coffee cup. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen him do it before, she said. You're not the first person he's destroyed. But you might be the first who can fight back. Her eyes met mine, steady, almost defiant. You have proof, don't you? She asked. I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. Catherine pulled a small envelope from her bag and handed it to me. Inside were printed copies of internal memos, notes about IT requests, instructions to delete user accounts, Michael's signature authorizing retroactive edits to archived files. These aren't supposed to exist outside the system, she said. But I make backups. Always have. I stared at her. You're risking your job. She gave a bitter laugh. My job? He's been trying to push me out for months. I'm just speeding things up. I slipped the envelope into my bag, my pulse racing. With this, the puzzle was tightening around Michael. His fraud wasn't just sloppy, it was traceable. Catherine stood to leave. Be careful, Anna. He's arrogant, but he's not stupid. When he realizes you're still in the game, he'll come after you. I watched her walk away, blending into the crowd. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel alone. Michael thought he controlled the board, the deal, the narrative. But alliances were forming in the shadows. And shadows were my territory. David Lawson's office had the kind of silence that made every word sound heavier. I sat across from him, my bag stuffed with Catherine's envelope, my laptop balanced on my knees. Show me everything, David said. I spread the evidence across his desk like puzzle pieces. First, the drafts and logs from my hard drive. Then the side agreements from Michael's private folder. And finally, Catherine's memos, the smoking gun that proved he was rewriting history inside the system. David flipped through the papers slowly, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. His face stayed calm, but the way his pen dug into the paper told me he was impressed and maybe even a little excited. This isn't just intellectual property theft, he said. This is a pattern of fraud, obstruction, deliberate manipulation. You're not bringing a claim. You're bringing a hammer. I leaned forward. So what's next? We build a timeline. Step by step, document by document. We prove you authored the original work, prove he presented it as his own, and prove he tried to erase you. If we do this right, the contract doesn't just collapse. It detonates. The word detonates hung in the air. And the board? I asked. David adjusted his glasses. They'll try to protect the company first. But once they see exposure, criminal charges, SEC scrutiny, they'll cut him loose. Better to sacrifice one man than burn the entire house. It was exactly what I wanted to hear. I pulled out my laptop and slid it toward him. I've got logs from the server room. File transfers, badge swipes, timestamps. They tie everything to his account. He can't argue it away. David smiled faintly. That's good. Very good. But remember, once we move, he'll know. And men like Michael don't go down quietly. I thought about Catherine's warning, about Michael's smirk in the boardroom. He was arrogant, yes, but dangerous too. Still, the thought didn't scare me. If anything, it sharpened my focus. David leaned back. We'll prepare a demand letter. Nothing public yet. Straight to him. We give him a choice, settle quietly or face the storm. My guess? He'll try to intimidate you first. He'll push back. That's fine. The harder he pushes, the deeper he sinks. I nodded. The humiliation in the boardroom felt like a distant memory now. In its place was something colder, stronger. This wasn't about getting my job back. This wasn't even about the money anymore. This was about pulling the mask off a man who thought he was untouchable and showing everyone what was really underneath. When I left David's office, the city felt sharper, like every building, every streetlight was part of the battlefield. The contract wasn't signed yet. $30 million still floated in the air. And I was done waiting. 3 days later, Michael Grant received a letter with my name on it. It wasn't handwritten, wasn't dramatic, just a crisp, 2-page document drafted by David Lawson. A demand for acknowledgement of authorship, restitution of intellectual property, and a warning. Proceed with the contract and we go public. David sent me a copy. Reading it felt like pressing a trigger. Michael didn't waste time. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against David's advice, I picked up. Anna, he said, his voice smooth as ever. We need to talk. I almost laughed. Now I was worth talking to. Funny, I said, last time we spoke, you told me I wasn't cut out for the big table. Silence on the line for half a second. Then, you don't understand what you're doing. This isn't a game. No, I said. It's business. And you built your entire pitch on my work. His tone hardened. You think a few drafts and emails are enough to take me down? You're out of your depth. Do you really believe the board will choose you over me? I leaned back in my chair, smiling to myself. They'll choose survival. And you're the one putting them at risk. Michael exhaled sharply. You're making a mistake. Walk away now and maybe there's a settlement for you. Keep pushing and I'll bury you in lawyers until you can't afford coffee. Coffee's cheap, I said. Fraud isn't. For the first time, his voice cracked. You don't know who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, I replied. A man about to lose $30 million. I hung up before he could answer. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline. For once, I had spoken to him without bowing, without swallowing my pride. And it felt better than any promotion ever could. That evening, David called. He's rattled. Expect retaliation. He won't roll over. I don't want him to roll over, I said. I want him to fight. The harder he fights, the uglier his trail gets. David chuckled softly. Spoken like someone who understands leverage. But I knew what came next wouldn't be a clean legal battle. Michael was too arrogant, too practiced at crushing people quietly. He'd try to corner me, smear me, erase me for good this time. The difference now was simple. I wasn't afraid anymore. And I wasn't alone. By the end of the week, the letter had reached more than just Michael. Somehow, maybe through Catherine, maybe through Thomas, it found its way into the hands of the board. I heard about it before Michael did. Thomas texted me late at night, directors asking questions. He's sweating. The next morning, the company lobby was buzzing. Employees whispered in corners, glanced nervously at closed conference room doors. Something was happening on the 12th floor. Something big. I sat across the street in a cafe, with a direct line of sight to the tower. Laptop open, burner phone on the table, waiting. By noon, Catherine called. Her voice was low, urgent. They've opened an internal review. Finance and legal are both digging into the contract. Michael doesn't know who leaked, but he's furious. He's tearing through offices like a storm. I pictured him pacing the boardroom, that smug mask slipping for the first time. The thought was almost sweet. What are they looking for exactly? I asked. Proof the deal is clean, Catherine said. If it's not, they'll cut him off to protect themselves. He knows it. That's why he's panicking. As if on cue, my inbox lit up with an anonymous email. No subject line, no signature. Just a single attachment, an internal memo from one of the directors. It read, if discrepancies are confirmed, contingency plan will be enacted. Replacement options under review. Replacement options. My lips curled into a smile. Michael always bragged about being irreplaceable. Now his own board was drafting succession plans behind his back. But I knew better than to celebrate. A cornered man doesn't surrender. He fights dirty. That evening, Thomas called me from his car, voice tense. He's trying to pin this on you. Says you doctored files to discredit him. HR's running checks. I almost laughed. Good. The deeper they dig, the more they'll find my name. It's burned into everything he stole. Thomas hesitated. Anna, he's dangerous. Don't underestimate him. Too late for that, I said. I looked up at the tower again. Windows glowing, executives pacing behind glass walls, a hive in panic. For the first time, it wasn't me on the edge of collapse. It was Michael Grant. And the glass tower he built his empire on was beginning to crack. Michael Grant was many things: arrogant, ruthless, reckless. But subtle? Never. By Monday morning, the first signs of desperation were already visible. Catherine sent me screenshots of IT requests marked urgent. They weren't ordinary maintenance tickets. They were commands: delete archived drafts, rewrite file histories, adjust timestamps. Every request stamped with Michael's approval. He was trying to erase me. Again. Only this time, his eraser left streaks. In the digital world, clean edits don't exist. Every change leaves residue, mismatched dates, phantom logs, invisible fingerprints. And Michael, for all his corporate charm, didn't know the first thing about covering tracks. He thought ordering people to fix the records was enough. I met David in his office that afternoon. He skimmed the latest batch of evidence and chuckled. He's digging his own grave. This isn't just sloppy, it's obstruction. If a regulator sees this, they'll crucify him. I leaned over the desk. Good. I want him cornered. I want the board to see him sweat. David gave me a measured look. Be careful what you wish for. Men like him don't break gracefully. They thrash. They drag others down with them. I thought of the boardroom, of his smirk as he humiliated me. I didn't care if he thrashed. I wanted him dragged out screaming. That evening, I got a call from Thomas. His voice was shaky. Anna, something's off. He called a private meeting with IT. Closed doors, no notes. People say he's hiring outside help to rewrite entire servers. Let him try, I said coldly. Every time he edits, he proves my point. Still, I couldn't shake the tension crawling up my spine. Catherine's warning echoed. He's arrogant, but he's not stupid. Later that night, I pulled up my own set of logs from the server room. And there it was, his fingerprints. Files marked as modified at impossible times, drafts suddenly created months after I'd already uploaded originals. Bad for him, perfect for me. The beauty of it was simple. The harder he tried to erase me, the clearer my presence became. Around midnight, another anonymous email landed in my inbox. This one short, blunt. He's planning to blame you. Prepare yourself. I stared at the words, pulse quickening. Michael was cornered. He was making false steps, desperate moves. But desperation makes people dangerous. And I knew the next round wouldn't be fought quietly behind keyboards. I knew Michael would try to erase me. What he didn't know was that I had prepared the bait. One evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a single file waiting on the screen. It looked like another draft of the financial model, numbers shifted slightly, margins tweaked, just enough to appear valuable. But hidden inside the metadata was a marker. A digital fingerprint only I could trace. If Michael tried to use it, or worse, alter it, the marker would flare like a beacon. Proof of tampering undeniable, timestamped. I uploaded the file into a shared folder I knew he still monitored. And then I waited. 2 days later, Catherine called me. He's panicked. IT found a new draft, and guess whose name it's under now? His. The trap had sprung. That night, I met with David in his office. He scrolled through the logs, eyes narrowing, then widened with satisfaction. This is perfect, he said. He walked right into it. The file shows your original creation date, your metadata, and then, bam, his edits layered on top. It's not just theft. It's active falsification. I felt my chest tighten, not with fear, but with cold triumph. Michael's arrogance had done the work for me. Later, Thomas texted, he's losing it. Screaming at IT, blaming everyone but himself. People are talking. Good. Let them talk. Every rumor chipped away at his image. Every whisper made him weaker. But I wasn't celebrating yet. The trap was just one piece. What I needed was to make it undeniable, not just to a lawyer, not just to HR, but to the board, the client, and anyone else who might hesitate to believe me over a CEO. That meant timing. I stared out my apartment window at the glowing skyline. Somewhere in one of those towers, Michael was pacing, raging, trying to hold on to his empire. He thought money and power made him untouchable. But I'd just proven that even the most polished king can choke on a single poison seed. And this was only the beginning. The next move wouldn't come from him. It would come from me. By Wednesday morning, the office was buzzing like a beehive someone had kicked. From my vantage point across the street, I could see clusters of employees near the glass walls, heads tilted together, whispers passing like static. Every call I got from Thomas only confirmed it. People are saying he's under investigation. Finance is triple-checking every number. Legal hasn't left the 12th floor in 2 days. Michael Grant's empire was starting to wobble. Catherine slipped me another memo over encrypted email. It was a summary from the board's private meeting, questions raised about leadership stability. Potential interim options discussed. Interim options. My lips curled into a smile. The man who once called me worthless was now being discussed as replaceable. But the most satisfying detail came from Thomas. He blew up in the middle of the office today. Yelled at an analyst for asking about a missing draft. Half the floor saw it. People are scared. Scared. That was new. For years, Michael had walked those halls untouchable, the kind of boss who didn't need to shout because everyone already bent under his shadow. Now he was cracking in public. And the thing about fear in an office, it spreads faster than fire. I knew what was happening because I'd lived it before. Gossip is currency. Once people sense blood in the water, they trade stories, they embellish, they pass along every scrap of dirt they've collected. And with Michael, there was plenty. Suddenly, old grudges resurfaced. People remembered the promotions he stole, the projects he sabotaged, the way he humiliated staff just to boost his ego. All the things that had been whispered in break rooms were now spilling into daylight. The building itself felt different. What used to look like a fortress of glass now resembled a fishbowl. Every move Michael made was watched, dissected, judged. Late that night, I sat at my window with the city glowing beneath me. My phone buzzed with another text from Thomas. Board meets again Friday. He's in trouble. I stared at the message, heart steady. Humiliation had been my beginning. Now it was his. And the best part? I hadn't even played my final card yet. Friday morning brought the kind of storm no corporate PR team can contain. I was in the cafe across from the tower again when Thomas called. His voice was clipped, like he was trying to hold it together. The client's spooked, he said. They've heard rumors about inconsistencies in the deal. They're asking questions, direct questions. My pulse jumped. How close are we talking? Too close. They want confirmation on the actual numbers. If they don't like what they hear, the contract's dead. Dead. The word hung between us like smoke. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was $30 million teetering on the edge. Across the street, I watched a black sedan pull up to the building. Suits stepped out, briefcases in hand, moving with the precision of people who smelled blood. The client's team. Inside, chaos. Catherine texted updates in real time, there in the boardroom. Asking for documentation. He looks pale. I pictured Michael in front of them, his charm cracking, sweat beading at his temples. For years he'd been the man who closed deals with a handshake and a smirk. But charm can't cover numbers that don't add up. By noon, another message buzzed my phone. They found discrepancies. 10 million unaccounted for. Meeting turned hostile. My chest tightened. 10 million. The missing slice Thomas had warned me about. The part Michael had skimmed like a thief pulling bills from a stack. The cafe was noisy around me, orders shouted, cups clinking, but I heard none of it. Just the steady thrum of adrenaline in my veins. Finally, Catherine sent one more update. They left without signing. Contract frozen until further notice. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. $30 million suspended in midair, slipping from his grip. Thomas called again, whispering now. Anna, he's unraveling. He blamed finance, then legal, then tried to pin it on IT. The board isn't buying it. They're furious. I closed my eyes, letting the moment sink in. The man who laughed in my face, who called my work worthless, was now staring down the collapse of the biggest deal of his career. And the cracks were spreading fast. By the end of the day, word had leaked beyond the building. Competitors whispered, journalists sniffed, investors asked why a $30 million agreement had suddenly gone dark. Michael wasn't just fighting me anymore. He was fighting gravity. And everyone knows how that battle ends. It happened on a Sunday evening. I was at home, half asleep on the couch, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it. But something told me to pick up. Anna Carter, a man's voice asked. Smooth, clipped, professional. Yes. This is Daniel Wright, Chief Financial Officer for Northbridge Partners. We're the client behind the $30 million agreement with Grant and Company. I sat up straight, every trace of fatigue gone. I know who you are. Good. Then you'll understand why I'm calling. Off the record. My heart raced. For weeks, I'd been preparing for war inside the walls of Grant and Company. But now the battle had come to me. We've been reviewing documents provided by your CEO, Wright continued. And we've found inconsistencies, serious ones. Frankly, it looks like numbers were manipulated. I want to ask you directly, did you prepare the original models? There it was. The opening I hadn't expected but had prayed for. Yes, I said without hesitation. Every projection, every formula, every structure. It's all mine. He presented it as his own. Silence for a beat. Then, do you have proof? I have everything, I said. Drafts, logs, emails, even metadata. And I can show exactly how he altered the files to hide the truth. I could hear him exhale on the other end. That matches what we suspected. He showed us a version of the model that didn't reconcile. When we pressed for details, he blamed it on clerical errors. I almost laughed. He's not sloppy. He's greedy. He skimmed 10 million off the top. Another pause. If you're willing to share your documentation, it changes things. A lot of things. I'll share it, I said carefully, but only if it's on record. No more whispers. No more backroom deals. My name stays attached to my work. Wright's voice tightened, but not with anger, with respect. Understood. Send what you have. We'll handle it from there. The call ended, and I sat staring at my phone, the weight of it sinking in. For the first time, I wasn't just fighting to prove I'd been wronged. I was being invited into the fight for $30 million. Michael's empire wasn't just cracking now, it was caving in. And the client, his prize trophy, had just reached out to me. The invitation came faster than I expected. 2 days after the call, I received an official email from Northbridge Partners. Polite, professional, but loaded with meaning. We would like you to present your original model to our executive team for review. Confidential session. Wednesday morning, 9 a.m. For a second, I just stared at the screen, pulse hammering. This wasn't a side conversation anymore. This was real. Wednesday arrived. I walked into their headquarters with a slim folder under my arm and my laptop in hand. No cardboard boxes, no cheap coffee mugs. Just me, my work, and $30 million hanging in the balance. The conference room was modern, understated. Glass walls, long table, city skyline glittering beyond. At the head sat Daniel Wright, the CFO who'd called me. Beside him, 3 senior executives, all with that measured look of people used to cutting through lies. MS. Carter, Wright said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I nodded. Thank you for asking. No small talk. They dove straight in. Show us, one of the executives said. I connected my laptop to the screen, opened the files, and began. My voice was steady, my slides clean, my numbers precise. I walked them through the original model, growth projections, risk distribution, profit curves. Everything Michael had stolen, polished, and passed off as his own. But I didn't stop there. I highlighted the differences between my drafts and his doctored version. Red flags lit up on the screen, mismatched margins, inflated growth rates, hidden costs. Then I showed the metadata, creation dates, author tags, file histories. My name stamped everywhere his wasn't. This, I said, clicking to the final slide, is the truth. And this, I pulled up Michael's altered draft, is fraud. 10 million skimmed through manipulation. He didn't make a mistake. He made a choice. The room was silent. Executives exchanged looks. Wright leaned forward, fingers steepled. Ms. Carter, he said, if what you've shown is accurate, then our contract with Grant & Company is compromised. Why are you coming forward now? I met his eyes. Because my work matters. Because I refuse to be erased. And because if you want the project to succeed, you'll need the person who actually built it. The words hung in the air, heavier than any numbers on the screen. Finally, Wright nodded slowly. We'll be in touch. I packed up, walked out of the glass tower, and stepped into the cold morning air. For the first time since that humiliating boardroom meeting, I felt the ground shift beneath me, not collapsing, but rising. Michael had built his empire on stolen work. I had just shown the client the truth. The turning point had arrived. And I wasn't done pushing. By Friday, the news broke inside the tower before it ever reached the press. Thomas called me first, his voice hushed, but almost giddy. It's happening. The board just voted to remove Michael from the project. Effective immediately. I gripped the phone tighter. They actually did it? They didn't have a choice, Thomas said. Northbridge confirmed they won't sign with him attached. Too much risk. The directors had to protect themselves. I pictured it, the boardroom where he once smirked at me, now filled with nervous executives watching their golden CEO crumble. The same walls that echoed with applause when he presented my work were now holding silence as his title slipped away. Catherine texted me minutes later. He lost it. Yelled at the board. Security had to escort him out. I leaned back in my chair, letting that image burn into my memory. Michael Grant, the untouchable, dragged from the room like any other liability. But the fallout didn't stop at the glass doors of Grant & Company. Words spread fast. Clients whispered, partners hesitated, competitors sharpened their knives. By evening, industry blogs were buzzing, CEO under fire after failed $30 million deal. The man who thrived on reputation was now drowning in it. That night, I sat at my window with the city glowing beneath me, phone buzzing nonstop with updates from Thomas and Catherine. Every new message painted the same picture: panic inside the company, uncertainty in the markets, Michael's name collapsing under its own weight. For 3 years, I had walked those halls invisible, erased, ignored. Now my shadow stretched longer than his. But satisfaction wasn't enough. Not yet. I didn't just want him removed. I wanted him ruined. Because the truth was still out there, waiting to be revealed. And when it finally surfaced, $30 million wouldn't just be lost to him. It would belong to me. The official email landed on a Monday morning. Subject line: Contract Renewal, Northbridge Partners. I opened it with trembling hands. The message was short, almost clinical. Northbridge Partners has confirmed their commitment to move forward with the agreement, pending revisions. They have specifically requested Anna Carter's continued involvement as project lead. Project lead. I read the words 3 times, my heart pounding. Not consultant. Not witness. Lead. Within an hour, David Lawson called. Congratulations, Anna. It's official. They recognized your authorship and they want you attached. Grant and Company is preparing a compensation package. Significant. How significant? I asked cautiously. 7 figures, he said. And a formal title. They can't afford to lose you now. For a moment, I just sat in silence, letting it sink in. The same company that had tossed me aside with a cold email was now writing checks with my name on them. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the fact that every executive, every director, every whispering employee inside that glass tower would now know the truth. My work, my name, my place at the big table. Thomas called next. It's chaos in here. People can't believe it. They're saying your name in every meeting. Half the staff is rooting for you, the other half is terrified they'll be next. I laughed, sharp and real. Let them be terrified. By afternoon, Catherine texted, they're issuing an internal announcement tomorrow. Your title goes live in the system. He won't be able to erase you again. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. For months, that building had been a monument to my humiliation. Now it was something else entirely. A stage. And soon, everyone would see the final act. Because the deal wasn't just salvaged, it was mine. The office was quiet when I stepped into my new corner office for the first time. Not the cubicle at the edge of the floor, not the temporary conference rooms where I'd begged to be heard, but a real office. Glass walls, polished desk, my name etched on the door, Anna Carter, project lead. The city stretched beyond the window, glittering like a reward I had fought tooth and nail to earn. I set down my bag and sat in the chair, letting the silence settle. It wasn't about the furniture, the view, or even the paycheck. It was about something simpler, sharper. For years, I believed the system rewarded talent. That if you worked hard enough, played by the rules, someone would notice. But this war had taught me the truth. The system isn't built to notice you. It's built to use you, until you learn how to turn its weight against itself. That was my lesson. Being underestimated wasn't a curse. It was my weapon. Michael never saw me coming because he never bothered to look. And that's what destroyed him. I leaned back in the chair, speaking the words out loud as if Michael could still hear them echo down the halls. You said my work was worthless. Today, it's worth 30 million. And tomorrow, it'll be worth even more. I let the silence stretch before turning my thoughts outward. To you. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated, pushed aside, erased, told you weren't good enough, only to realize later that it was the very thing that gave you power? Because in the end, that's what saved me. And remember, every story lives as long as it is remembered. A like is your mark on the story, and a subscription is your ticket to the next one.